Undead and Married is a romantic vampire cozy mystery and is book one in Andy Lowe's Blood Bond Agency series. The series is published by Squabbling Sparrows Press and is also available in ebook and paperback.
Chapter 26. Eva couldn't believe it. Not that the captain was in the right place at the right time. Rather, it was when the girl's body was lit up by both sets of headlights that she'd noticed a couple of things. First, it was the girl they'd saved earlier, and she had telltale marks on her neck. But not puncture wounds, as Eva would have expected. Instead, it was the energetic outline of what appeared to be a man's hands, if the size was anything to go on. They wouldn't have been visible to the casual observer. To Eva, they might as well have been put there using luminous paint. Eva would have staked money on the girl not dying from blood loss. Her death was at the hands of a human because vampires didn't kill using blunt force. It was easier to suck a victim dry and eradicate the puncture wound with saliva, as Dominik had. They'd then leave the body for the police to puzzle over. At least, this was the case with all the murders to date. They were still crouched next to the dead girl when Captain Hugo made his way over to them. Dominik straightened and helped Eva to her feet. Taking in the grim line of Hugo's mouth, Eva was thankful she had an alibi in Dominik. His being from the most eminent family in the neighborhood and even the country, the captain wouldn't dare to question his word. She'd even relaxed when the captain spoke. "I'm placing you both under arrest for the murder of this girl." "You're what?" spat out Eva and Dominik in tandem. The overweight captain puffed himself up, a button on his shirt proving it wasn't up to the challenge of containing his stomach. He gestured to the young woman. "What else am I supposed to believe?" Even with her energy levels at half-mast, Eva wasn't buying what the captain was desperately trying to sell. He was lying and he wasn't convincing. "Perhaps you could have given some thought to this while you were parked on the other side of the road." It was enough of a tip to Dominik to have him striding over to the police cruiser and slapping his hand on the hood. "It's cold." "How long have you been parked there waiting, Captain?" he spat out on his return to Eva's side. "What the hell is your game?" Eva did some glaring of her own. Entrapment would be my guess. Being caught out in his lie, the captain didn't appear capable of rational thought, let alone putting anything into words. They took advantage of his befuddlement, needing to get out of there and fast. So fast that Eva didn't wait for Dominik to open her door, she did so herself. Before she closed the door, she called out, "The family's lawyer will be in touch with the commissioner before the night is out." Dominik matched her actions. "As will ours." "You go too far this time, Captain." "You go too far." Despite Eva not wanting to leave the poor girl lying there, she knew they needed to get away from the scene before any further officers turned up. If she was coming back to retrieve the chronicle, she couldn't do that while locked up. It would also put a stop to them finding out exactly who murdered the girl, and why. Her heart stuttered at the thought the young woman died simply to trap them. She shared her theory with Dominik, but he didn't agree. "I don't think so. There has to be more at stake than Sebastian being after your power, or to put the agency out of business." Eva didn't share his optimism. She knew firsthand what a devious and nasty character Sebastian was. How desperate he was for power, or perhaps money. The vehicles parked in that subterranean garage pointed firmly at the need for ready cash. Lots of it. More than the shady character could generate from that dating agency of his. Reaching no resolutions, they returned to the hotel. It was only when Magda was removing the auburn wig that something dawned on Eva. "Oh my blood, I've just realized something. The captain didn't know it was me." Dominik, slouched in a club chair in the room's corner, jolted forward. "You're right. But that means—" Eva turned away from the mirror to stare at him. "He was out to arrest you, not me." Luca, lying back on the bed, sat bolt upright. "This puts a unique spin on things." He looked from Eva to Dominik, his brow wrinkled. "But who would be stupid enough to target you? And why?" Magda's hands remained atop Eva's head. "I think I know." It was such a far-fetched notion that on reaching her bed later that morning, Eva had trouble falling asleep. Could Dominik's cousin be right? If she was, then Eva was facing even bigger problems. Like Sebastian forcing her into a loveless and no doubt short-lived marriage. For any of Magda's theory to pan out, Didi had to be wrong about her and the gorgeous Dominik being related, even if distantly. With thoughts clamoring for attention, sleep finally claimed Eva. Waking the following evening, she felt lackluster, her energy levels still not up to par following her visit to Sebastian's home. It would be another day before she was back to normal. During that time, she needed to keep herself safe at the agency with Lilith and Didi in attendance. Another safety measure was that the front door was to be locked, even during business hours. It was a breach in protocol that Georgia would never tolerate, but Eva had no issues with. While her employee's concern was sweet, she welcomed it, knowing she needed all the help she could get. Rather than starting the night behind her desk, she was out in reception, tucked into one corner of the large couch. There were 2 bags of Georgia's plasma by her side, taken from the agency's secret stash. Eva would never have thought to help herself to one, let alone 2. Didi had no compunction about breaking out the reserves, gently heating both bags in a pot of hot water before handing them to Eva. For a start, Eva did nothing but hug the warm bags to her chest, taking comfort in having this small part of her grandmother close by. And as tempting as it was to call her grandmother home, she wanted to deal with this on her own. It was this, rather than a drive for energy, that had Eva stabbing a bag with the sharp metal straw Didi had given her. The first mouthful of the precious golden liquid flooded her with comfort and power, Georgia's raw power. Unable to stop herself, Eva kept drinking until both bags had been sucked dry and her body was flooded with her grandmother's strength. It was no surprise that Didi protected this stuff like a dragon guarding her eggs. The power of the plasma being accessible to any vampire meant that in the wrong hands, it would be dangerous indeed. She was about to ask the receptionist if the rest of George's plasma was locked up nice and tight when the front doorbell tinkled, causing Eva to start. She realized she still had some healing to do because she hadn't heard their visitor arrive. Yet Didi and Lilith seemed to have known, judging by their bustling about and tidying up. Before Didi opened the front door, Eva rose sluggishly from the couch, fumbling to straighten the skirt of her dark green suit. While Eva was slow to react, Didi bustled around, grabbing the empty bags off the couch and thrusting them at Lilith. "You need to get rid of them, permanently. There must be no trace." A moment later, and Lilith was off to the basement and the incinerator to ensure no trace remained of George's plasma. As Didi opened the door, Eva's heart dropped upon seeing Angel march in. She still hadn't come up with any potential matches that would appease both Angel and the Baroness. The only thing she'd had time for was instructing Lilith to dig up everything she could on Raphael Bauer, the man Angel had set her heart on marrying. Even seated at her grandmother's desk, Eva still hadn't decided how she'd play this. "Angel, I've been giving your choice some thought." It didn't matter that this was in the previous 10 seconds. The girl sat up straight in the visitor's chair, her eyes glued to Eva's face. "And? I'll set you up on a date with Mr. Bauer, but only if you promise me 2 things. Eva then raised her hand to prevent Angel from speaking. "First, you are not to drink from him, no matter how tempting. And second, you are not to tell the Baroness about this. Can I rely on your discretion?" "Yes, absolutely. She'll not hear about it from me," Angel replied eagerly. Eva sensed the truth in the girl's words. "In that case, leave things with me. It will take some organization on my part to set this up and find an appropriate venue." This wasn't entirely true, with Lilith's ability to hack into secure networks bound to make the task relatively easy. Rather, it was that Eva wanted to maintain control of the situation until she could retrieve the chronicle. The table she and Dominik had shared at Arabella's would be perfect for the tryst, offering privacy and no chance of being overlooked or eavesdropped on. The tricky part would be to convince Raphael Bauer to travel from Austria to meet a woman he'd never laid eyes on. It would require Didi's renowned vampiric persuasion skills, and if that failed, perhaps a bit of coercion. With her young client satisfied for the moment, Eva spent the rest of the night alongside Lilith, scouring through electronic records for any information on Captain Hugo or Sebastian. Information on the police chief was easy enough to locate, but unremarkable. However, with the owner of Love Bites, the lack of ready detail raised Eva's suspicions. How could he afford all those high-end automobiles without taking out loans? One vehicle would have been suspicious enough, but an entire fleet of them raised even more questions. It was a mystery Lilith promised to dig deeper into, even if it meant crossing legal boundaries. Eva thanked her lucky stars for Lilith's hacking skills, though she hoped it wouldn't land them in too much trouble. After a brief phone call from Dominik, Eva retired early. Everything was set for them, along with Luca and Magda, to pay a visit to Sebastian's home the following day while he slept. The only people they were likely to encounter would be guards and humans, posing no challenge to them. Any vampires on the premises would be deep underground, safely away from sunlight. The visit would serve two purposes. First, Eva needed to retrieve the chronicle from the storage closet. Second, they hoped to find any clues that Lilith couldn't access online. There was something missing, something big, and they needed to uncover it. If all went well, it should be a simple in-and-out operation. Chapter 27. After less sleep than needed, Eva was in her grandmother's office a little ahead of 1 that afternoon. Unable to settle, she alternated between pacing and staring out the window overlooking the village square. It was a good thing no one could see her, thanks to the reflective film on the windows. Yet again, she was dressed to blend and so different from her usual polished self. Anyone who knew her would know she was up to something, just not what it was. Thanks to her exceptional eyesight, she easily spotted the police captain sitting at his desk in the station on the other side of the square. Like her, he was looking out. The difference was that he was taking advantage of what appeared to be military-grade binoculars. Even though she knew he couldn't see her, she jerked away from the window. His actions gave her pause. He knew full well they worked the night shift. She was fairly sure he knew they were vampires. So why was he working surveillance on their premises? What was he expecting to see? It made no sense. Could it be that Sebastian had warned the captain to be on the lookout that day? They were so careful at the party the night before. Her own mother wouldn't have recognized her in the disguise Magda settled on. To be fair, Eva had seen so little of her mother over her lifetime that it wasn't the challenge it might be for some. She'd come to no conclusions when she sat behind the large desk. Usually, the surface would be free of paperwork. That wasn't the case today. After pulling the thick report closer, Eva flipped open the cover. Lilith had worked hard to get this information in so short a time. There were pages and pages of balance sheets and even bank statements. The girl's ability to get past firewalls was as good as she'd always said. It was after reading the summary page at the front of the report that Eva knew why the Baroness was behind on her bills. The cost of Beatrice's wedding would be more than enough to sink most families. It also explained why Raphael Bauer was as rich as he was. He was a loan shark, having made his fortune off of vampires like the Baroness. This turned Eva's stomach, with anger and disgust welling up inside of her. Could it be that Angel knew of the debt and was out to help balance the ledgers? Could this be why the girl had her heart set on the human? Angel's options were endless. Marry him and, short of a prenup, the debts would be voided. Marry him and murder him before the ink on the bond was dry was another option. Or the girl could simply marry him, use persuasion to get him to change his will, then murder him, wiping out the debt and inheriting all his earthly goods. Had Eva read young Angel all wrong? No. No one was that big a gold digger, were they? The only thing was that it would be unusual for a younger member of a family to be privy to the clan's finances. This was strictly the preserve of the older generations. Eva couldn't imagine the Baroness sharing details with the young girl, anything but. Even allowing for the cost of the wedding, it was strange for a vampire clan to be this heavily mortgaged, and especially to a human. They had centuries to freehold any properties, something that had most family nests well feathered. The De Silva's a prime example. Eva would never want for anything. The only way that would ever happen would be if she were to make a disastrous blood match, say to a vampire like Sebastian. If that man were to access her inheritance, it would soon be frittered away on the luxuries of life, like a surfeit of sports cars. So? Not happening. It was on the second page of the report that Eva found what it was she was after: Raphael Bauer's home address and a phone number. It would be much easier to get in touch with him using this than any online form on his company website. After committing everything to memory, she ripped the page free before scrunching it up into a tight ball. This she fired at the open grate, following it up with a small burst of energy. It was enough for the paper to burst into flames when it landed neatly in the middle of the grate. As to the report, as tempting as it was to incinerate it too, Eva instead slid it into the bottom drawer of her grandmother's desk. And for a change, she even locked it, sliding the key into the special hiding place beneath the intricate inlay pattern in front of her. The fewer people who knew how much trouble the von Koenig family was in financially, the better. The blood bond agency's reputation for complete privacy had to be maintained at all costs. If word ever got out that Eva was behind a leak like this, they'd be ruined. Eva then sat quietly, waiting for the call from Dominik. The only thing in the room that wasn't quiet was her brain, working overtime on what she was supposed to do about Raphael Bauer and Angel. She was no closer to a decision when her phone rang. It was Dominik. With him also having seen the captain scouting out the village square, he'd parked a couple of streets away, telling her he was once again driving the black van. "I'll be there in a couple of minutes." Eva closed off the call and shoved her phone in the zip pocket of her hoodie. She was across reception and flying down the stairs soon after. After a quick check of the security camera next to the back door, she wasted no time exiting. So fast did she traverse the length of the alley that even if anyone were to catch it on camera, they wouldn't see where she'd come from. And with her long silver tresses and a tight plait under her hood, she wasn't easy to identify. There were pluses to always being seen teetering around in killer heels and designer outfits. When you dressed casually, you disappeared. Once out on the street at the end of the alley, Eva played it casual. She even pretended to take photographs with her phone along the way. To the casual observer, she would be seen as just another tourist and nothing more. Next to the black van, she didn't pause, instead opening the door and climbing in. Safely behind the blacked-out windows, she allowed herself to relax. Who would have thought nonchalance would be such hard work? The engine was already running. Dominik turned to her and smiled. "Here, this is for you." He held a reusable takeaway cup out to her. Eva dropped her phone in her lap and quickly did up her seatbelt before taking the drink. The vehicle was now in gear, and he slowly sped off down the street. "I added some caffeine. I hope that's okay." Rather than speak, she nodded, cradling the hot drink like a lifeline. A quick sniff of the contents confirmed no exotic blood today. Rather, she was drinking good old-fashioned O-positive, the breakfast of champions. Eva turned back to Dominik. "How did your lawyer get on?" Eva had seen no point in getting the De Silva's lawyer to do anything with her effectively, not on the scene of the crime. Dominik laughed mirthlessly for a second. "Not too well." "What?" "There's no way they can make that murder charge stick." "No way in Hades." Dominik nodded slowly, not once taking his eyes off the road. "Not a chance. Actually, when our lawyer spoke to the commissioner, he wasn't aware of any murders in the past 48 hours. It took longer than it should for Eva's sleep-deprived brain to decipher this. So that's the way Captain Hugo was playing it. Her heart stuttered at thoughts of that young woman's body being dumped deep in the forest, left for the wolves to take care of. No one deserved that sort of end, with it yet another murder for them to solve. She was still deep in thought when she took a small sip of her drink. This caused her to blow out through pursed lips before squeaking, "Some caffeine?" Dominik's description as to the amount he'd added to her drink was an understatement. "Exactly how many shots do you call some?" Dominik took his eyes off the road briefly, giving her a sheepish grin. "It might have been 4. Eva would have given him more grief, but with their plans being what they were, she knew she needed all the energy she could get her hands on. Better to have trouble sleeping tomorrow than falling asleep today. Only after she'd had a couple of warming sips did she turn to say hello to Magda and Luca, who were in the back. Rather than sitting on the floor of the vehicle, they were happily ensconced in a plush sofa that swung about with the movement of the van. Eva doubted it came standard from the manufacturer, and it wouldn't pass any safety requirements, lacking seatbelts as it did. Morning, you two. Eva did her best to inject some spirit into her voice through an enormous yawn she could do nothing about. It proved contagious, with the others soon yawning in concert. It is too early for me. I need more sleep than this. Magda yawned again before snuggling even tighter into her husband's side, with him appearing to be as sleepy. After this, no one spoke because they were asleep or fighting it. On their way out of the village, they passed a police cruiser. It was parked behind a high wall, with two officers sitting patiently up front and doing what they did best. Nothing. On seeing another cruiser soon after, Eva picked up her phone and scrolled through the photos she took on her way to meet up with Dominik and the others. Sure enough, she spotted what she was scouting for. After flipping through all the photos, she spoke. 4. I count 4 lookouts. Dominik took his eyes off the road briefly to stare at her. Lookouts? Yes, on the buildings in town. They were obviously trying to stay out of sight, but doing a miserable job of it. Eva didn't bother holding her phone up for Dominik to check. Nor did he ask to see it, knowing her eyesight was equal to his. Instead, she slid it back inside the pocket of her hoodie. It was then she spotted Dominik glancing repeatedly in the rearview mirror. Are we being followed? She angled her head, allowing her to check in the mirror on her side of the van. Sure enough, there was a midnight blue, late-model Mercedes coming up behind them, fast. Too fast. Eva readied herself for the impact, but the vehicle zoomed by without slowing and without causing a crash. If the driver was worried about speeding tickets, they were hiding it well. Dominik peered at the vehicle as it disappeared around the next bend. That's interesting. What is? Said Eva, staring as hard at him as he was at the Mercedes. The windows were blacked out. Eva swung around, taking in the blacked-out nature of the windows in the van. What of it? Even the windscreen was blacked out. And you know what that means. He had a point. While the side and back windows of the van were blacked out, the windscreen only benefited from some reflective film. Eva kept her gaze forward, hoping to glimpse the Mercedes when they rounded the next corner. A vampire? That would be my guess, said a now alert Luca. Eva thought about it briefly. But if they're up and about during the day, this means they have to be vampire-born, doesn't it? Dominik frowned. Not necessarily. No one ventured any theories about this as they drove slowly past Sebastian's home. There were 2 points of interest here. First, there was a police cruiser parked out front, facing the road with 4 strangely watchful officers inside. Second, they glimpsed the dark blue Mercedes parked under the portico that fronted the main doors of the palatial building. Strange for Sebastian to have visitors when he was dead to the world. Or was he?
If you've enjoyed these chapters, we'd love it if you could give them a thumbs up. And if you'd like to continue the story, you can subscribe and tap the bell to be notified when the next chapter is released.